everyone. Welcome to today's lesson on Learn All Things Cyber with T. Like you know, my name is Tenitope. And initially, last lesson, I said we'll be discussing ports and protocol this week and then IP addressing. But looking at the fact that the video might be too long, and then it's very important that we dive really deep into IP addressing, which is very important, and then go into maybe subnetting. I'll be keeping today's video just on ports and protocol. So if you're new to cybersecurity, you might be wondering what is ports, then what is protocol. So basically, ports and protocol. I'll just try to break it down as simple as possible so that you can understand. So what is ports? Port is like a numeric identifier for network services or application. So port equals numeric identifier. So they always come in numbers. So identifier. So what is protocol? Protocol actually creates a kind of rule that governs data transmission. And I would explain this so that you'll understand it in simple terms. So say, for example, you have a building, an apartment with a door. So usually the port is like the door. And this door could open to different rooms. So think about ports as a door that could open to different rooms. It could open to a room with web browsing. It could open to a room with file sharing. It could open to a room with email. So ports as the door. Then protocol is like the rules that people have to follow in order to go through that door. So if I want to go into the door, what are the rules I have to follow? Do I have to move to the left, slightly a little to the right? This is what protocol is about. So protocol is like a rule that data sharing, data transmission must follow, and then port itself is like the door entrance to different network services. So usually the right definition for port is that port is a numerical identifier, just a number, but that opens to different doors. So it differentiates, different network services from each other. You differentiate the one for web browsing, the one for file sharing, and I'll be going into details about all of this. So let's pick it one after the other. Let's deal with ports first of all. So we have three categories of ports. We have the first one as the well-known ports. So number one, we have well-known ports, and it ranges in number. It ranges from 0 to 1023. These are the numbers that the well-known ports could fall into. We have the second one.
The second one is referred to as the registered port, and it ranges from 1024 to 49151.
Is referred to as the dynamic or private port. So in case you're writing a security exam and they're asking you, which number falls into what. So the dynamic or private port goes from
49152 to 65535.
So these are the three categories of ports, and we'll be looking into the very popular ones that falls within this well-known ports. Again, like I said, ports are just numerical identifier for network services or network application. Just saying, okay, we gave them different numbers. Protocol is the rules that you have to follow in order to transmit data in these network services. So you have to follow a certain rule for data to be transmitted. Again, an apartment door, and then the rules that people have to follow in order to use the door. That is what is referred to as ports and protocol. So we have different categories of ports that falls within that first class, which is well-known ports, and we use them day to day. We just don't know that we use them. So I will begin with the very popular ones. I'll tell you their ports, I'll tell you their protocols, I'll tell you what they are used for. Now, I want you to also understand that normally in cybersecurity, when it comes to doing interviews and all of that, I think I'd mentioned it in the past before that nobody gives you the full meaning of something in cybersecurity. Most times when you go for an interview, they will just tell you the acronyms of things. They expect that you will know it. I've done an interview for a SecOps engineering role before, and this particular question came out. And what they were doing was they were telling me the protocols, as mentioning the ports. So you should pay attention to this part. They usually ask it for entry-level roles and the rest. And so I'll begin from the very popular ones, and I'll divide the board so that you can have an idea of what it looks like. So ports and the protocols. Protocols, again, they are rules. So from the very beginning, we have port 20, port 21. These two ports actually follow the protocol of file transfer protocol. So the name of the protocol for these ports is file transfer protocol. And what does it do? So file sharing, for you to be able to upload a file and receive a file. That's what, this rule is all about. So it's the rule that governs uploading a file and receiving a file, downloading a file, whatever you say it is. So these two ports are actually the ports that follow. So whenever, sometimes when people try to, see which port is open, and you have these 2021 open, that means FTP is open, sort of.
So what this video is, this small clip is basically showing is my Windows PowerShell. So I'm trying to show you what it means for a port to be open, maybe over an IP or a domain. And like I said previously, that ports are like numerical identifier for network services. So I'd initially installed IMAP, and IMAP is usually used to check for open ports over a network. So I'd install IMAP, so I'll just use the IMAP command to check like a random IP to see the ports that are open on this on this IP, as you can see on the screen. 192.168.0.170 is just a random IP, and so I was able to check. And then after running that command on PowerShell, you can see that the ports that are open, we have 135, we have 445, we have 139, NetBIOS and the rest. So this is just to show you that you can visibly see the ports that are open, the protocol, and the services that they have. Don't forget that ports are numerical identifier for network services, and they are like an entrance door into like a building, while the protocol is the rules that will govern data transmission after you have entered that door. And that door could open to so many things. These so many things are the services. So again, I try to check for google.com to see what ports are open over that domain, and as you can see, there's port 80 over TCP. TCP is just remember the transport protocol, so transmission control protocol. And then there's port 443 also open. So HTTP means communication over web unsecured. HTTPS means that communication is secured. And I hope that helps.
So for port 22 is SSH, and SSH is usually used for remote login.
So I wanted to show you how SSH works, and this is me in my Git badge. I'd already had this multiple virtual machine already installed using Vagrant. You would learn this as maybe as you go, because I'm doing something around DevSecOps, so that's why I have all of this set up already. But as you can see, they are powered off, and I want to bring them up. So first I'm checking what is inside of the directory where I am right now, and you can do that by using ls to just list what is inside, which is not like the right command I should be using. So I also want to check the status of the Vagrant. So I'm using a command called Vagrant global status just to see what is running inside of the virtual machine, if there is any virtual machine running, and which directory they are, so that instead of me going about checking, normally you go to documents and go and check where your files are. In this case, I would be able to see the paths where they are, and this is the path online that I'm highlighting. So I'll just pick one of it, I'll copy one of those paths and then cd into them, so that I can be exactly in the directory where the virtual machine exists. So I just cd into it. Once I cd into it, I would then bring it up. I will bring up the background machine itself. As you can see when I showed you from the Oracle VirtualBox that they are all powered off. And so I will use the command background up to bring every one of them. As you can see, they are off. So to bring every one of them up, I'll use background up. And because it takes a while, because it's a multi-virtual machine setup, so it takes a while to bring everything up. You know, I have database, I have web, I have application services, I have Rabbit MQ. So I'll just pause the video and then come back to it. So we are back to the next video where everything is up right now. All of the 5 virtual machines are up, and then I want to SS, as you can see they are running, and I want to SSH into them. And this is to show you that port SSH that I was trying to explain in the previous video, what it means, the access, the remote access it means. So I could get into the database through the database virtual machine just by using that background SSH into the database. Like I told you, there are 5 of them, but I want to basically go into the database one. So I'm using background SSH so that you can understand what SSH means. And then I'll be in. And once I'm in, I would even go to the root by using sudo I, and then I'll be in the roots. And I think that's as simple as it can get. Other than that, I don't want to complicate things for you guys. Yep.
Usually used for remote login. We have port 23, which is called Telnet. Telnet is actually an unsecured version of remote access. You can use it to access something remotely, but it is not secured. It is not encrypted. And they explained this part before, that when something is not secured, then it is traveling in a plain text. Say, for example, you are accessing something remotely, but the communication is exposed out there. So an attacker can, attack from anywhere because it is not encrypted. So it is an unsecured remote access. We have 23, we have 25, which I believe a lot of us are familiar with. 25 is called SMTP. So SMTP means Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. And this is the protocol that governs us sending out email, not receiving out, sending out email. So when you click on your Gmail and you send out email, this is the protocol that functions in you sending out email, and then the email goes out. So it's called Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. Like I said, this is secure shell. That's the full meaning of this. This is file transfer protocol. And like I'll explain what this is used for. 25, we have 53, which is DNS. So DNS is domain name services. And what this does is, say for example, I'm trying to browse on google.com. So you type in google.com normally, and then there's a question of which IP is google.com. So how it works in backend is that you type in google.com. This protocol translates whatever you're typing into an IP, and then returns to you the information you need. So when you type google.com, what you just see is that you see that platform with search engine and the rest. What this protocol is doing is translating that name into an IP, getting the resources, and then returning it back to you. It transfers it. So that's why it's called domain name services. That's the protocol. Another one would be a very popular one, would be port 80, which is HTTP. So HTTP is hypertext transfer protocol, and this is the one we use in browsing. So when you browse the internet and it is not secured, so this is the unsecured version of it. We'll get to the point of the secured version of it, which we also use. So the unsecured version of it is on port 80. When you see port 80 open, it means that your browsing is in plain text. You're communicating over the internet, over a web browser in plain text. It is not secured. Whatever you're doing is not secured. If you put your credit card and all of that into a website where you're browsing and it is on HTTP, then it is not secured. So we also have we also have a very popular port 110. It is called POP3. So this POP3 means Post Office Protocol 3. So what does this do? This actually retrieve email. So receive, for example, it retrieves email from an email server. So there is this, and there's one more called IMAP. IMAP is on port 143. So IMAP. So both of them actually retrieve email. But the difference between both of them is that when an email is retrieved from POP3, the email is deleted immediately from the server. But from IMAP, no, there's a copy of the email on the server. Another difference that happens between both of them is that usually you can only access email with a single device for POP3, but for IMAP you can access it from multiple devices like a laptop, your tablet, your phone. You will still be able to see your received email. But for POP3 it's usually for single devices, and it's also popular anymore. People don't use it like IMAP. So usually people are using SMTP and IMAP. So this for sending email and this for retrieving the email that you have received. So 143, we have what else? We have 443. 443 is the HTTPS. So HTTPS, the secured version of HTTP. So when you're using the HTTPS, usually you are supposed to see like a padlock on your browser to show that your browsing is secured, or the communication happening over whatever you're doing is secured. So it should be on port 443 usually. So these are the popular ones, but I'm not done yet, and we still have like a couple of them that are left. We have port 3389, which we call RDP. So RDP is remote desktop protocol, and usually it's like for Windows remote access. So it functions with Windows. People want to access remotely and all of that. This is the protocol that governs that remote access. We have port 3306, which is like MySQL, is MySQL actually, but it's used for MySQL database communication. So people who are familiar with database understand what this protocol means. We also have this 5432 is a PostgreSQL. Sorry, I'm calling it SQL or PostgreSQL. Sometimes people call it SQL or SQL. So it's usually for database. These two are usually for database. But why I'm specifically mentioning them is that sometimes you're going to get them in exams, you can get them in interview, you can get them anywhere. People can ask you. So these are like, database connected. This is for remote access, but for Windows. Now I mentioned a couple of popular ones also, DNS and all of that. So basically, this is what I have for today regarding ports and protocol. And I would also still want to mention some protocols that are not very connected. They are wide range. They are used by different ports. Things like TCP, things like UDP, things like ICMP. So protocols. So we have TCP, we have UDP, we have ICMP, we have, I'd mentioned HTTP and HTTPS. I'd mentioned what they are used for. We have FTP. I'd mentioned FTP, File Transfer Protocol, or SFTP. That's the secured version. And this secured version is also on a different port. It's not on the same port as this one, which is like 20 and 21. What else? We have the one that deals with email, like I mentioned before. That is SMTP, POP3, and IMAP. So I'm just trying to mention I've mentioned these three before. I just wanted to point attention to this one. So this one is transmission control protocol, and I mentioned it in the last lesson that is usually what makes sure that our messages are delivered accurately and completely. If you remember, I mentioned. So it's like a lot of ports also travel over TCP, like TCP/IP. So I mentioned that this protocol is what determines that your message gets to where they need to be completely. And if you also remember in the lecture, I was mentioning that it requires connection, and it does something called three-way handshake. And I explained what that three-way handshake means. That the first part is the SYN, that's the synchronize. The second part is the SYN-ACK, that's the synchronize, acknowledge, and I would explain it. And the last part is the acknowledge. So again, I mentioned what a client is. I mentioned what a server is in the last lesson. So the synchronize is the client sending a message, or like we said that at this stage where there is a transport, in the transport layer is usually transferred as a segment. So let's say the client is sending a message to the server that are you ready to receive? Are you available to receive? The server would return with sync and acknowledge, like synchronize, acknowledging that I'm ready to receive, and then it will go back to the client, and the client will acknowledge that yes, I have gotten a message from the server is ready to receive a request from me. And that's how this three-way handshake looks. I explained it better in the last lesson, and this is all about TCP. For UDP, I also mentioned that UDP is user datagram protocol, and that this protocol is connectionless. It doesn't happen over any connection. There is no certainty that your information is going to arrive accurately and completely. It's usually fast, and then it's used for streaming of videos, which we use for YouTube and the rest of those streaming platforms. For this one is a little bit new, and this is the Internet Control Message Protocol. This is usually used for ping. So when there is an error, this is the protocol that handles pinging to know, okay, what is happening, which device is active, which one is down, and the rest. So usually they use it for ping generally. Is the Internet Control Message Protocol. That's the full meaning. And that's all we have for today on CompTIA Protocol. I'll see you next week. Thank you.